February 26, 1991, Iraqi tank commanders braced behind layered sand berms, certain their armored lines would slow the American advance at this vital boundary. Within minutes, their trusted T-72s and T-55s were vanishing in flames. Coalition tanks were striking targets they could not see in a sandstorm that made the Iraqis blind. How did this battlefield, mapped as a last chance for Iraqi defenses, become the scene where crews realized survival was impossible? The answer begins with the strategic race toward the 73 Easting Grid, where speed and technology would decide everything. Coalition planners had one overriding priority as the ground war began. Their goal was to prevent the Iraqi Republican Guard from escaping north out of Kuwait. The 7th Corps, with its armored divisions and cavalry regiments, was assigned the task of swinging wide through the featureless desert, a maneuver known as the left hook. Their mission was clear: advance rapidly, cut off retreat, and destroy the Guard's best formations before they could regroup. Every move was controlled by a series of phase lines, imaginary grid lines drawn across the desert, each one marking a new limit of advance. 73 Easting was just such a line, chosen not for any natural landmark but for its position on the map, a waypoint in the race to close the trap. Orders issued to the 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment were explicit: drive east to the assigned phase line, make contact, and fix the enemy in place. The urgency came from intelligence reports showing large Iraqi units preparing to withdraw. If the Americans moved too slowly, the Republican Guard would slip away, ready to fight another day. Too fast, and they risked outpacing their own support and blundering into unknown defenses. The left hook depended on speed, coordination, and the ability to fight through whatever waited behind each sand berm. The entire operation was a gamble to seize the initiative and force a decisive engagement before the enemy could vanish into the desert. At 73 Easting, the coalition's intent was simple: close the door on escape and bring the enemy to battle on ground of the coalition's choosing. Iraqi commanders along the 73 Easting line faced a stark reality as the ground war unfolded. Their mission was not simply to hold ground, but to buy time for the Republican Guard to escape encirclement and preserve the core of Iraq's military strength. Defensive orders came down from Major General Salah Aboud Mahmoud: delay the coalition advance, inflict casualties, and keep the main withdrawal corridors open toward the north. The Tawakalna Division, supported by the 18th Mechanized and 37th Armored Brigades, was tasked with holding the approaches to the IPSA Pipeline Road, a lifeline for retreating units. To achieve this, Iraqi forces constructed a series of defensive belts. Tanks and infantry fighting vehicles were dug in behind earthen berms, positioned in depth across the desert. Minefields and obstacles were laid to slow and channel any attacker, forcing them into pre-sighted kill zones. Artillery batteries were sighted further back, ready to support the front lines with rapid fire. Each position was designed to trade space for time, accepting that ground might be lost if it meant delaying the Americans long enough for the Guard to slip away. Iraqi doctrine relied on mass fire and rigid defensive lines, with the expectation that prepared positions and Soviet-designed T-72 and T-55 tanks could withstand a frontal assault. Commanders believed the Americans would be forced into a costly, methodical attack, giving Iraqi units the chance to fight, fall back, and regroup. But as intelligence reports warned of coalition envelopment from the west, urgency grew. Orders began to reflect a grim calculus: hold as long as possible, then withdraw before being cut off. The fate of the Republican Guard, and perhaps the regime itself, rested on the ability of these defenses to delay the inevitable. Across the open desert, the Iraqi defense at 73 Easting took shape as a series of engineered obstacles. Each defensive belt stretched for kilometers, marked by earthworks that rose abruptly from the sand, berms built to slow and channel armored vehicles. These berms, often standing 1 to 2 meters high, ran parallel to the main approach routes, forming layered barriers spaced roughly a kilometer apart. Behind each berm, trenches and revetments shielded tanks and infantry fighting vehicles, their hulls partially buried to reduce their silhouette and improve survivability. Between these lines, minefields added another layer of danger. Anti-tank and anti-personnel mines were sown in dense bands, sometimes hundreds of meters deep, intended to force attackers into narrow corridors where Iraqi gunners could concentrate their fire. The density of mines varied, but in key sectors, engineers laid them thick enough to threaten even the heaviest tracked vehicles. In some places, additional obstacles, steel rails, concrete posts, and abandoned vehicles were scattered to complicate breaching efforts. The design of these defenses reflected both experience and urgency. Iraqi engineers had studied how armored assaults worked, using the flat terrain to their advantage. The berms did more than block movement. They masked the positions of tanks and fighting vehicles, allowing defenders to wait in ambush. Each belt was positioned to create overlapping fields of fire, with the expectation that any attacker would be forced to halt, bunch up, and become vulnerable to massed volleys. This system of obstacles was not simply a wall, but a layered trap. Iraqi commanders counted on these belts to buy time and inflict losses, confident that their earthworks and mines would slow even the most determined advance. Rows of T-72 and T-55 tanks, their turrets barely visible above the sand, waited in hull-down positions behind the berms. Iraqi crews had spent weeks preparing these revetments, carving out pits to lower the tanks' silhouettes and shield them from direct fire. The doctrine was clear. They relied on line-of-sight gunnery, massed volleys, and the protection of earthworks to blunt any armored thrust. Each tank was positioned to cover the most likely approach routes, barrels aimed toward the west and southwest, fields of fire overlapping across the open desert. In theory, the hull-down stance would expose only the strongest armor and present a narrow target, forcing American attackers to crest the berms and reveal themselves first. Confidence ran high among the defenders. The T-72, with its 125mm gun and reputation built in Soviet training manuals, was seen as a match for any Western tank. The older T-55s, though outclassed on paper, still offered a solid punch and were trusted for their reliability. Iraqi commanders counted on numbers and the geometry of their defenses, layered belts, pre-sighted kill zones, and overlapping arcs of fire. The plan called for holding firm, trading shots from prepared positions, and bleeding the enemy as they advanced. Every crew drilled for the moment when dust clouds on the horizon would signal the attack, believing that their static lines and dug-in armor could withstand the coming assault. In the silence before contact, Iraqi gunners watched through their sights, certain they would see the enemy first and fire the opening salvo. Visibility collapsed in the hours before contact. Weather station logs from the sector recorded dust density so thick that daylight faded to a saffron haze and the horizon vanished in a wall of sand. Sensors measured visibility dropping below 400 meters, less than the length of a city block, leaving both attackers and defenders shrouded in a moving curtain of grit. For Iraqi tank crews, the world narrowed to the inside of their turrets and the faint outlines of berms just ahead. Periscopes and gun sights fogged with fine particles, and the usual cues, sun, shadow, and distant movement, were erased. Voices traveled only a few meters before being swallowed by wind. Some crews switched on headlights or infrared lamps, but the beams bounced back in a blinding glare, revealing nothing but swirling dust. Radio traffic grew frantic as units lost visual contact with their neighbors, and commanders struggled to confirm even the direction of the American advance. The defensive geometry, so carefully plotted on maps, became guesswork. Gunners pressed their eyes to clouded optics, scanning for a sign, any sign of movement, but the desert beyond the berms was empty and silent. For the defenders, the sense of blindness was total. The sandstorm had not just masked the enemy, it had erased the battlefield itself. The only certainty was that whatever came next would arrive unseen and at terrifying speed. On the battlefield at 73 Easting, the difference between seeing and not seeing became everything. While Iraqi tank crews peered through glass optics fogged with dust, the Americans relied on thermal sights that revealed the desert in shades of heat. The M1A1 Abrams and Bradley fighting vehicles used forward-looking infrared called FLIR to cut through the sandstorm. To the US gunners, enemy tanks glowed as distinct shapes against the cooler background, their engines and gun barrels radiating clearly even when the naked eye saw only haze. This technology worked at distances beyond 2 kilometers, allowing American crews to detect, identify and target Iraqi armor long before the defenders could respond. The thermal image did not care about darkness or swirling grit. Anything warmer than the sand stood out. Iraqi T-72s and T-55s, by contrast, depended on daylight optics or early-generation night sights that failed completely in the storm. Their searchlights and image intensifiers scattered in the dust, creating glare but no picture. In practice, this meant American tanks could line up shots at vehicles that were still blind on the far side of a berm. The first sign an Iraqi crew had of an enemy approach was often the impact of a sabot round. US gunners described the battle as hunting silhouettes on a screen, not fighting shadows in a storm. The technological edge was not just about range, but about knowing before the other side could even guess that the next move belonged to them. Captain H.R. McMaster sat in his Abrams, radio pressed to his helmet as the sandstorm raged outside. The original order was clear: advance to the 70 Easting, recon by force, and report enemy contact. But as Eagle Troop crept forward through the grit, McMaster recognized the moment demanded more than caution. Fragmentary orders crackled across the net. Continue to attack to the limit of advance to the 70 Easting. Destroy any enemy you find. Visibility was almost gone, but the troop pressed on, thermal sights cutting through the haze. The lead tanks crested a rise and spotted Iraqi armor, silhouettes glowing on the screens. McMaster's voice came sharp and direct. Contact front, multiple tanks, engage. The first rounds tore through the storm, striking dug-in T-72s before their crews realized what was happening. As the troop reached the 70 Easting, McMaster saw the Iraqi defenses did not end there. More enemy vehicles, more berms, more threats lurking in the storm. He radioed for permission to push farther, then ordered Eagle Troop to attack to and seize the high ground east of the 73 Easting. The message was simple: keep moving, keep firing, do not give the enemy a chance to recover. Platoon leaders relayed the command: push through, keep moving, destroy what you see. Turrets swung, gunners tracked targets, and the line surged ahead. Every Abrams and Bradley advanced as one, momentum building with each engagement. In those minutes, leadership was measured in bold decisions and relentless movement. McMaster's initiative turned a reconnaissance into a full assault, setting Eagle Troop in motion toward the heart of the Iraqi defense. The next moment would belong to the gunners. Gunners in the Abrams watched their targets bloom into focus on thermal screens, the desert cold haze split by hot outlines of Iraqi tanks. The command came: contact front, and within seconds the American turret snapped to engage. The M1A1 electro-hydraulic traverse spun at nearly 40 degrees per second, allowing crews to swing from one silhouette to the next in a fluid, relentless rhythm. Iraqi T-72s, with their slower creaking turrets, barely managed to turn before a sabot round punched through their armor. Each time an Abrams crested a berm, the gunner called out targets and fired as soon as the crosshairs settled. In the storm, Iraqi gunners struggled to react. Their optics were useless, their turrets lagged, and the distance between detection and destruction shrank to a handful of seconds. Alongside the tanks, Bradley fighting vehicles carved their own path through chaos. Their commanders used the 25mm Bushmaster to rake enemy infantry and light armor, while TOW missiles arced out to destroy armored personnel carriers and even tanks that tried to reposition. One Bradley commander recalled seeing a BMP break from cover, and 2 seconds later it was gone. In less than half an hour, Eagle Troop and its supporting Bradleys destroyed dozens of armored vehicles. The kill tallies mounted almost too quickly to count: 28 tanks, 16 armored personnel carriers, 30 trucks in just over 20 minutes. For the Americans, the engagement became a test of reflex and discipline. For the Iraqis, every attempt to fight back was smothered by a storm of fire they could neither see nor answer. The balance of the fight was never in doubt. The only question was how long the defenders could endure the storm. Artillery batteries and rocket launchers stood ready as the armored advance pressed deeper into the Iraqi lines. Fire support officers monitored radio traffic, relaying coordinates for fresh targets that appeared as the sandstorm shifted. Within minutes of the first tank volleys, 155mm howitzer shells began to land among Iraqi vehicle clusters and assembly areas behind the berms. The ground shook with the impact of high explosive rounds, and dual-purpose improved conventional munitions sending shrapnel through trucks, armored personnel carriers, and dug-in infantry. Forward observers called in adjustments, moving the barrage east to block retreat lanes and disrupt any attempt at reinforcement. Corps-level multiple launch rocket system batteries joined in, launching salvos of 227mm rockets towards suspected command posts and fallback positions. The sky flickered with distant flashes as rockets arced overhead, their impacts blanketing grid squares beyond the immediate fight. Iraqi commanders, already struggling with broken communications, found their rear areas collapsing under sustained bombardment. Vehicles attempting to escape north along the IPSA pipeline road were caught in the open, many destroyed before reaching safety. Throughout the engagement, the tempo of supporting fires never slackened. Mortars suppressed enemy infantry who tried to regroup, while artillery fire cut off avenues of retreat. The effect was cumulative and devastating. By the time the armored line reached its objective, the battlefield lay scattered with burning hulls and abandoned equipment. No Abrams were lost to enemy fire. The combination of direct tank fire and relentless supporting artillery sealed the fate of the Iraqi defense at 73 Easting, leaving a landscape that spoke for itself: shattered lines, blocked escape, and a silence broken only by the crackle of burning steel. Today, armies train for battlefields where visibility vanishes and technology decides who survives. The lesson at 73 Easting echoes in every modern tank design and war game. Surprise now comes from sensors, not just strategy. As conflicts evolve, the advantage belongs to those who see first and strike first. The desert proved it. How we prepare for the next blind fight may decide who writes tomorrow's history. Share your thoughts below.